to thank all of you for being here. This is an extraordinarily important matter. We have an incipient crisis across the country. In New York, as is not uncommon, is the vortex of the debate about what is an appropriate response. The bill before you was drafted with the active participation of the Museum Association of the State of New York and the Board of Regents of the State of New York, who have regulatory authority over most cultural institutions. In the end, we really do understand and appreciate your centrality to the cultural, intellectual, aesthetic, and economic life of the state. And that the enterprise here, as have others that I have been involved with, including work with the New York Public Library, work with the New York Historic Society, and others, has been to make sure that we do not, in a crisis, see a massive privatization of art, which is, I believe, a likely outcome if current trends continue. I'm not, since we're going to ask all of you to be relatively brief, I'm going to leave it at that, except to say nothing in this is written in stone. We do believe that all that's in here reflects the current policies that your accrediting institutions require you to obey today, and that we are going to proceed with an open mind and a sympathetic ear. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. We've been joined by Assemblymen Michael worked in museums when I was 14 at the American Museum of Natural History and Vertebrate Paleontology, and at the Brooklyn Children's Museum, where I was a junior curator. I'm interested in this from a professional perspective. In my adult years, I have been a professional curator, and I am the curator of geology at the State University of Stony Brook, and have been for 37 years. I wrote the guidelines for the Natural Heritage Trust Zoo, Botanical Gardens, and Aquariums program, and was deeply involved with that for 13 years before I took statewide office. I am keenly interested in preservation of the cultural heritage of our state, and Mr. Brodsky's bill is certainly something that deserves our collective attention and thoughtful reaction to. And within that context, I'm very, very grateful to see so many of the leaders of our cultural institutions here. I have to tell you, I am not just passive, and not just a geologist in my interests. I'm not going to tell you the full story, but I'll tell you just a little bit of what brought me into sharp focus on this issue. I was at Christie's auction house last year. I had fundraised privately, found private donors to help purchase at auction, if we were lucky and we turned out to be fortunate enough to be able to purchase, a letter that related to George Washington's spy ring, signed by George Washington, at West Point. You live in the spy house, that's true. And the spy nest was my community in Sitwalker. This is a very important document. I felt that we got a bargain at $35,000. What really got my attention, though, is that while I was there with the library director of the University Library and members of our local historical society who had pledged part of their endowment, if need be, as well as representatives from our archive at SUNY at Stony Brook, representatives of the President's office at Stony Brook. While I was there, focusing on the Washington letter, up came, just before, the immediate prior auction, up came an offering from a New York library to sell the original document in Lincoln's handwriting, his second inaugural address. It set a new world record, 1.6 or 8 or something $million. And that really got my attention. What a conflict, what a contradiction between the mission of the group that I was a part of, privileged to be a part of, and this sale to an anonymous buyer. It's gone. I realized as soon as the hammer was dropped, it was gone to an anonymous buyer. It was an extraordinary part of our state heritage, our American heritage. We don't know where it is. Maybe it's not even in this country. I was then keenly interested when talking to my colleagues who had already, well before a year ago, been working on this with the regents and with many of you. And so that's just one example. I could give others, but that's one example of what has really riveted my attention on this, and the importance of taking a step back to examine whether or not we are able to resolve the numerous subtleties of what is the question of what is the right thing to do.